now is Daily Beast columnist Matt Lewis, who's also the author of the brand new book. It's called Filthy Rich Politicians. Also here, CNN political commentator Karen Finney, CNN opinion contributor Sophia Nelson, who's a former House Republican Investigative Committee counsel, and Danelle Harvin, a former chief of Homeland Security and Intelligence for the government of Washington, D.C. Well, all the reputations precede you. I love that you're all here today. Listen, the fact that he was there at all has made many Democrats say, what are Republicans thinking? They tried to go in executive session. They didn't want him to come in the first place because of these facts. Yet he's polling still very high, not close to Biden, but as a Democratic hopeful, it's there.
Well, but those numbers have been relatively consistent, and I do think a lot of that is his name, and he knows. I mean, if he wasn't a Kennedy, he wouldn't have even been invited to come to the hearing today. So let's be very clear about that. I do want to just say, I'm going to say it to take a step back, that, you know, COVID should never have been politicized ever, period, full stop. But that's the environment that we live in, right?
And we're still in.
And we're still in. People are still dying from COVID. I think it's important we remember that. And part of what is so outrageous about the comments that he made, they're just dangerous. And so for the Republicans to provide a platform for someone to be able to, you know, promote conspiracy. I mean, he lied essentially under oath by saying he'd never said it. I consider it a lie. I should say it that way, given that we have the proof that he has said it. You know, but the Republicans knew exactly what was going to happen. Then they knew that's how he would use this platform. And frankly, there was a little bit of a conspiracy between them because RFK Jr. knew exactly what the game was.
Well, remember, this was a hearing, though, supposed to be about censorship. And that was what they said he was there for. And the idea that it started out, I think, Jim Jordan, with a request to have from the administration a tweet taken down about his thoughts surrounding this very issue. He was kind of saying, look, if you censor me now, you're proving the point. Did they?
Well, look, I do think, stepping back even further, I do think that there's a larger debate that is important. Now, I think Republicans are obviously playing politics. They're trying to score cheap points. But I think there's a deep debate and a tension between misinformation and censorship. And think of it this way. On one hand, misinformation can be incredibly dangerous. People could die because of it if they don't get vaccinated. And it's so much easier to spread misinformation now because of social media that there's no gatekeepers. On the other hand, we should have a society and a media that's welcoming of diverse and contrarian opinions. So, like, for example, the lab leak, which we don't know if the lab leak was true it's unclear, but Tom Cotton, a Republican senator, was accused of basically being a conspiracy theorist when he posed that theory. So I think that there's a tension here that we're going to have to grapple with probably for decades because we're in a brave new world.
How?
I think, though, I want to pick up what Daniel had said. I was actually out at Auschwitz 2 weeks ago. These words aren't innocuous, okay? It is anti-Semitic, and when you blame or not blame some people for getting COVID or not getting COVID, it may not mean anything to RFK Jr., but there are people who are very sick and very demented online that pick up on these things. And in a time, from a Homeland Security standpoint, where we have the highest rate of anti-Asian crime and crime against those who are of the Jewish faith, those words mean something to some people. And so I know there's tension between what you can say, the First Amendment, and what you can't say, but these are hateful words, and to give him a platform like that, I think is a kind of abhorrent.
I think everything everybody said is true. However, there's politics here, basic. The Republicans are weaponizing RFK Jr. against President Biden. Why? Because if you look at the poll numbers, we know that this House of Representatives run by Kevin McCarthy, these Republicans are very beholden to Donald Trump. They're in his camp. There can be no question. If they can weaken Joseph Biden just a little bit by using RFK Jr., that amazing name, that name that carries a lot of weight with a lot of people, particularly over 60 years of age, right? No matter how wacky he may be or he may appear. So I think it's really about raw politics. Can we weaken Biden? Because Biden is still up in all the polls.
By the way, he invoked his uncle, of course, the late president, and also his father, knowing that, and talked about the idea of, listen, you're calling me these conspiracy theorists, and I'm paraphrasing him, you're telling me I'm not a true Democrat either, and I'm adhering to things that I believed in, but that's part of the, you call it kind of the stunt, that you don't, do you even doubt that he truly is running truly on a Democratic ticket, or is he a kind of red herring?
Well, I think, just to pick on what Sophia said, I mean, the Republicans were using him to legitimize a process that has been pretty flawed, I think it's fair to say.
Which process do you mean?
I'm sorry, this weaponization committee that has been kind of a joke the whole time. At the same time, he was using them, too. He knew exactly what that platform would afford him, and he knows that in terms of this issue about trying to weaken President Biden, he's participating in that. I suspect he believes that he is a Democrat. I think it's very telling that his whole family, or most of his family, have actually denounced what he's been saying.
Right?
Right. So
she's distanced herself in some areas, right?
But others in the Kennedy family and part of that legacy have really taken great pains to distance themselves. And I think that should say something to us. But look, as you and I have discussed before, Laura, I do think as Democrats, we have to take it seriously, because he certainly could create chaos in the Democratic primary. So, we take it seriously. At the same time, I do think in a real matchup, I don't think he would win more than a few percentage points once people are clear about what he's actually doing.
I do wonder about the trend. I mean, Donald Trump was like the first mover advantage in the Republic. He shows up being this very different kind of politician, and basically, I think, hijacks the Republican Party. And now, but we're saying, well, the Democrats, though, they really have their leaders. Like Nancy Pelosi has the House in line, and they nominate Joe Biden, this sort of mainstream kind of centrist Democrat. And now we're seeing maybe it's a lagging indicator. It's not just Robert Kennedy Jr., but there are other potential Democrats who are now running. And
an indicator of what? That this is not the matchup people want to see?
No, well, I think that is true. But no, what I'm saying is that we have now opened this can of worms where kind of contrarian, eccentric candidates are running, and it was Donald Trump first in the Republican Party, and now we're seeing it in the Democratic Party. And I don't know if it's going to get traction against Joe Biden, but it seems to be a trend.
That's the point I was going to make before you made it plug for your book. Politicians that get rich or rich politicians. The bottom line is this is a really good way for RFK Jr. to not just wreak havoc, but to really make a whole lot. Not that he might need a lot more money, but the bottom line is this pays. Misinformation and disinformation, it pays. It makes you famous all over the globe. It's a stunning place that we're in right now, and it's not good.
Yeah, and he's tapping into a trend that we've seen over the last decade, and that's really the degradation of truth, right? And when the normal man or woman doesn't know up and down, if you believe in mis and disinformation, if you believe in conspiracy theories, you're not listening to this conversation right now.
Yep.
You're getting your news from the darkest, deepest parts of the web or other outlets that are feeding you exactly what you want to hear. That's not fact checked.
Yeah, because we're the swamp,
correct,
according to them.
Who wouldn't want to watch Laura Coates?
You're telling the truth, and they don't want to subscribe to the truth.
It's 10 p.m. on CNN, everyone. Everyone stay with me right here. We are less than 2 hours away from the deadline for Donald Trump to respond to Jack Smith's letter. Will he? And we're learning one of his advisors left the grand jury room abruptly today. I'm going to tell you about why. Plus a new theory on how the Gilgo Beach serial killer suspect lured his victims. And we're now learning what was taken in the search tied to Tupac Shakur's murder and whose home was actually searched. There are details next.
Say the blacker the better, the sweeter the juice. I say the darker the flesh, and the deeper the roots. I get my olives and my